First of all, I have to excuse myself because English is not my mother tongue, so if I get anything wrong, hopefully you don't kill me. Yeah? Tim has 4 centuries of experience in hospitality, and he's facing the... Well, I'm the same age, don't mind.
That's great, that's right. We're very old, Herbert, don't worry.
We have the same problem. And he's going to open a very interesting project this week. He started sustainability, to bring into sustainability into hospitality, I think since 2012. Mm-hmm. Tim, it's yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Herbert, for that. I'm not 400 years old, by the way. No, first of all, thank you for allowing us to speak here at this event. I'm just going to talk you through what we've been going through and maybe some of the issues that we've had in terms of actually developing and now going on to operate what is a net zero hotel. A lot of people have been talking about this for the last decade or so, and it's something which I'd like to share some of the things with you. I'm not going to share all of them because we haven't got enough time, but the initial bit is obviously a little bit about the journey. I was listening to a conference actually with Jonathan Porritt at the time, now Sir Jonathan Porritt, who was giving a lecture on net zero carbon buildings within the UK, and the government were actually sponsoring a lot of net zero buildings, and a lot of these were schools, they were leisure facilities, bus stations, etc. And everybody's sort of thinking, yes, that's fine, it's net zero, it'll happen in the future, sort of thing. And I thought to myself at the time, well, I'm actually here from a hotelier's point of view. Why am I here? It means nothing to me at all, right? There's no net zero. There's nothing to do with sort of sustainability in terms of any hotel brand specification. Right? I've been involved in building hotels and building schemes and things for hotels for the last sort of 25 years. And I thought to myself, well, there's nothing there. Why isn't there anything there in terms of sustainability? It should be there. We should start thinking about it from a hospitality point of view. So there was a massive sort of vision that suddenly came to mind. Light bulb moment, call it what you like. Something has to happen within the hospitality side, and nowadays, I mean, it wasn't at this time. I'm talking now nearly 15 years ago. Nowadays, we're all talking about this is all backed by scientific evidence, right? So we're now talking scientific stuff at the end of the day, and we do have to do something. It's not a shall we, shan't we, right? We have to do something about it as a planet, and certainly as in terms of the hospitality industry, we do have a duty, and particularly here in the UK. Because of all the numbers of people that are working in the hospitality industry, and also the number of people that are actually supplying the hospitality industry. What we had to do then, so we sort of took up this sort of challenge. We had to create something which was actually cost effective, and it was actually repeatable. Right? I know there are sustainable hotels, there's net zero hotels around which are very much one-offs in the UK, and not necessarily in the UK, sorry, worldwide, but there isn't anything really which is actually really repeatable. And that was the big goal, to try and achieve something that was actually going to be repeatable. So what we needed to do was to actually create something which didn't diminish in any shape or form the guest experience. That has been paramount throughout all our discussions, all our negotiations, all our supply chains and everything. We have to retain, or even better, the guest experience. That is crucial. That's you guys, and it's Joe Public. It needs to be retained. So, 2019, we actually formally appointed the start of the sort of committee. In fact, it was an architect, an engineer, and an interior designer. We then got funding through in 2022. We worked very closely with a company called Lusada PLC. Simon is an advocate of leaving a legacy in terms of sustainability. He knew what we'd done in hotels before. We do have 2 other hotels in Bridgewater, but he's bought into what we're doing in a big time. 2023, we got through into the funding, and then we also did had an agreement, a collaboration, if you like, which is why I call it a collaboration with IHG. We did go through a little sort of testing period, really, if you like, with hotel groups, and we actually we sort of joined forces, if you like, with IHG and also with Valor Hospitality. So we're looking at IHG being the brand, if you like, and then Valor operating this wonderful asset that we're actually going to produce. So what we've managed to do is actually create something which is actually incredibly close to net zero carbon. I'm going to put up a slide on here which is actually all got the facts and figures on it, which you'll be able to sort of take pictures of. I'm quite happy to share this with anybody else that wants to do this. So we have to make sure that technology that we're actually employing, both in the construction side and also in the operational side, is going to get us as close to net zero as possible. And that's really crucial. And that basically meant that all throughout the construction period, every single material that came on site was actually logged. It was weighed, if it was steel or if it was concrete or whatever, and it was noted. So every single bit of material, even if it's a carpet, curtains, knives, forks, everything, every single thing on that hotel has got a sheet on it, and it has a carbon cost. And we've tried to get as much of the stuff done in the UK. It's not been 100% possible in the UK because we in the UK don't actually manufacture some of this stuff yet. We will do in the future, I'm sure. So we had to work out the construction materials. We had to also work out all the FF&E. We had a sort of sustainability procurement schedule, which was quite a complex thing, but it basically meant, does it come from the UK? Yes. Is it sustainable? What are the CO2 credentials? Blah, blah. If it is, yes, tick box, buy it. If it doesn't, you go around another bit and you then go to Italy or you go somewhere else. But majority of the stuff is actually UK. The main other points were to do with two intrinsic parts of any other development that's going to be done from now on, which involves embodied carbon and also your EUI, your energy use intensity. We have to take those two bits of equation into account now, and also the cost. But they are really, really important. Sorry, I've missed out a slide here. Just quickly going on, I've just gone through that lot. Just explaining the embodied carbon thing. Historically, when you're building a hotel, and we all know this, your spec goes up, your cost goes up, right? It's a two-dimensional thing at the end of the day. Now, you've got to look at your embodied carbon. You've also got to look at your EUI. Your embodied carbon is your construction. Your EUI, your energy use intensity, is your operation. And there are strict limits now as to what you've got to achieve in both embodied carbon and energy use intensity going forward. And I'll come on to that in a little minute. Things that we have used, for instance, in terms of, so that's become a 3D model, right? It now moves. So if you try and get yourself to become a little bit better on your embodied carbon, your costs will go up, or energy use intensity might go down, or whatever. So the balancing act there is a very delicate one. What aspects have we been incorporating in the Voco Zeal hotels? One of the big ones has been the actual structure itself. That's been key. It's usually a huge emitter of CO2, and certainly in the UK. We did try, and we went for CLT to start with. We spent probably the best part of 12 months working with CLT, only to find out actually that UK building regs, although they allowed it, financially it wasn't going to work. So we could do the whole building in CLT, which would be fantastic from a sustainability point of view. However, we'd have to cover up 80% of the timber, mainly for acoustics, not for fire. But that layering that with the battens and then the plasterboard, etc., was going to add another just over £500,000 to the price. Therefore, the cost went up. Therefore, it wasn't going to make it financially viable at the end of the day. It's electric only. That's standard as far as we're concerned now going forward. We do have solar panels on the roof and also on the elevations. And we've got the best part of they'll produce probably about 305,000 kilowatt hours a year in terms of energy. We will use about 295,000 kilowatt hours a year. So we're going to be energy positive. Now, it's not going to happen now, today, because wet, raining, blah, 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 clouds in the sky. But over the year, that is what's going to happen. We did go through the period of looking at battery storage on site, and we looked at it. It was going to take, I think, the volume of 3 standard bedrooms in area, and it also was going to get hot, and it was going to cost another £500,000. It's not going to work. From a cost point of view, again, took it out of the equation. We have got space within the hotel design for battery storage for the size of 1 bedroom. It's vacant at the moment. Well, it's not, because the kitchen have always got stuff they want to put in there, but it is actually there. So we have future-proofed that to a certain extent. We've got charging points, etc. Biodiversity, we took in a greenfield. Our biodiversity figures are through the roof, something like 247%. We've got the best part of, we've planted the best part of 65 trees, some of which are 3.5 to 4.5 to 5 meters. So they're not just little things. They are big trees. Local supply chain, it's crucial. It was mentioned earlier on this morning about Scope 3. That is really crucial. There's a story about that, but I haven't got time for that at the moment. And all the staff that we're actually taking on board, they're all now trained in carbon literacy. We put a course together. We are, as I said before, we're linked with IHG, we're linked with Valor, and we did a Zeal training course. So you go through your ethos of IHG, you go through your ethos of Valor, and now you've got a small course with Zeal as well. What Zeal really means, what we can bring to the party, what differences we have in terms of our hotel, what in terms of design, and also the operation. So that's something that's really crucial. And I can't remember the name of the gentleman who was talking about the S in the ESG. That is one of the most important parts. I know it's taken us 5 years to design a net zero carbon hotel, but actually operating it is going to be really important and not easy. Just to put in perspective, I know a lot of you probably here, actually, let's just show of hands. The CREM pathway, how many people know about the CREM pathway? Oh, wow. Sorry, I'm very surprised. I think there were about 2 years ago. CREM pathway, the old CREM pathway you can see is the orange one. The new one is the green one. Hotels on the left there, which are the blue ones, they're standard 4-star full-service hotels. None of those have got big sort of meeting rooms. None of them have got swimming pools. Those, unfortunately, did not fit on the graph. They went sky high. So all these boys on the left here have got a lot of work to do. Red ones are limited service hotels. The 2 yellow ones are 2 hotels in Bridgewater, but our hotel is the green one down the bottom. That's where it stands. We're smashing the 2050 target. It's actually works out as it's about 60. It's actually just shy of 60. 59.9 is our figure. But that just puts it in perspective as where we stand in terms of sustainability. Fact sheet, which I've sort of spoken about a little bit, but by all means, again, I'm quite happy to take a picture of this or send you this if you want. BREEAM Outstanding is one that I haven't mentioned before. We're with that on design. We're now on track for that on certificate as well, although we only PC'd 2 weeks ago, and we are opening the hotel formally on Thursday of this week. So if you do want to go down and have a look at it and experience it, it's there. Quick synopsis of it. That is a CGI because when I left there yesterday, they were still laying this bit of tarmac out here. We did have a friends and family last weekend, which went very well. This is reception area. Hasn't come out particularly well, but we do have living trees in the hotel. Restaurant area. Standard bedrooms. All bedrooms have got windows. Heating and cooling is very different to anything else. There's no air conditioning. There's no comfort cooling. Air conditioning uses too much electricity. Comfort cooling uses gas. We can talk about that until we're blue in the face. How are we doing on time? I'm not doing very well, am I?
10 seconds more.
Sorry. Anyway, listen, that's who we are, and we love people to join us on the journey. Any
Thank you,
investors
Tim.
out there? Sorry, Herbert.
May I introduce the first questioner? Does the partnership with Zigzag and Vela Hospitality enhance hotels' marketing positioning?
Sorry, with Zigzag.
Maybe this is just...
Maybe IHG?
Probably IHG. Might be a
yeah.
Is somebody going to put the hand up?
No.
Autocorrect Zigzag. We do have good long-standing working relationships with both IHG and with Vala. To be fair, we have spent the last 6 months or so really concentrating on the hotel and getting it ready for launch. And we will be continuing with IHG and Vala. If that changes at any stage, by all means, let's have a cup of coffee. We can obviously chat. There's no doubt.
So the next question is, what are expected ROAs and payback periods for investors? I would, in connection with this question, I also would like to ask, how does that what you do affect real estate value?
It's a good question. Everybody has this thought process of making your hotel sustainable is going to be a lot more expensive than building a normal hotel. We did our costings and we agreed our prices and everything 2 years ago on this hotel. The costings were about 5% more than standard 4-star hotel. Now we're at 165 a bedroom, 165 a key. You probably can't build a 4-star hotel now at 165 a key. You're probably looking at more than that. But we're only about 5% more. Having said that, because of what we're saving, the sort of passive house style design, and I can go into this a lot more, but there's thicker walls, for instance, and the heat retention and all the rest of it, and the fact that it isn't air conditioning and comfort cooling, it's adiabatic heating and cooling throughout, which actually uses fresh air and everything else, and there's windows in the rooms. So there is a saving in electricity costs per annum. We have another hotel up the road which is 144 bedrooms, and our electricity bill in that hotel is just shy of £300,000 a year. For this particular hotel, because of the way it's designed, our electricity bill is projected at £86,000 per annum. And that doesn't include any of the solar panels, by the way. That's just the design of the building itself and the air handling units and all the rest of it. So we're saving the best part of £210,000 a year. And that goes straight down onto your EBITDA. Capitalise that up. You're the bosses. You know how that works. 3 million quid? 4? Any advance on 4? 2 down here. 2. Thanks, Russell. Cheers, baby.
You want to answer the question regarding the payback period, approximately?
Oh, sorry, payback period for investors. Certainly in terms of everything that we've utilised within the hotel, and I'm talking about ROI on stuff that diminishes in value. You've got to replace and all the rest of it. If it replaces, if you can get payback within 12 months, do it. Don't question it. Do it. If you get payback within 3 years, have a look at it, assess it, etc. If it takes more than 3 years, wait until it gets to below 3 years. That is my call in terms of return.
Well, the investors may expect a 3 years payback period. Do I understand that right?
Well, that's fine.
Okay.
But if they get the money back in 3 years. I'm not talking about investors investing into new hotels. We would like to partner up with other people that are thinking about doing a similar thing. Right? We do have equity behind us, but we believe that it's better to share what we've got with others at the end of the day, and we'd like to talk to people that are interested in developing new hotels and new hotel buildings, new assets. Because we believe that we now have all the, we have 2 Bibles. We have a construction Bible and we have an FF&E Bible. And the FF&E Bible is about 600 pages long. And that has every single item in that hotel on that Bible. And we believe that we can speed the process up considerably. We've learned a lot in the last 5 years, and particularly in the last 2 years in construction. And we can bring that to the party. We can share that with other people. We'd like to do that with other developers, and we're already talking to others who have got sites. We've got Germany, Italy, we've got 2 or 3 in the UK, whereby planning permission has been granted, but it's been granted on a net zero carbon basis. And they tend to be more now on bigger mixed-use schemes. So you've got, you might have some residential in there, and you might have some, schools or whatever, or some leisure facilities. And the usual thing is that, oh yeah, we'll bring a hotel at the end. But it's all going to be net zero carbon. We can do that. And we can condense that period. So other people going out there trying to do what we've done, I'm guessing it'll take you 3 years at least. Then you can start building. But we've got it now. We can help.
The next question is somehow related to electricity demand and the amount of electricity provided by the PV. I think you said that before.
The demand for electricity, we've calculated it out, and this goes on to bed spaces and people stay in the night and lights on and off and showers and everything else. Electricity we're going to be utilising has been suggested at 295,000 kilowatt hours per annum. Normally in hotels of this size, you'd be looking at near 1 million. So we're chopping that down by 1/3, hence the cost comes down by 2/3. And our solar power energy that we're actually generating is going to be 305,000. So we're a net generator of energy. And that will be going back to the grid at the moment. The business part we are within, or next door is thinking about putting some battery storage in there, so we may actually be feeding into that, as opposed to giving it to the grid for 5p, we might put it into the science part for 10p. Those aren't quotable figures, by the way, they're just ideas at this stage.
Tim, the next question is related to refurbishment. The cost for refurbishment seem to be 150% of a new built one. Is this still the case, or has the construction industry innovated to improve that?
I think it's absolutely right. I mean, we've been looking at some of the people have been coming to us actually with existing buildings to convert into net zero carbon buildings, and the costs are extreme. They are really high. You've got to look at the structure of the building. You've got to look at the roof. You've got to look at the windows, the triple glazing, the insulation. Everything's got to be looked at right at the outset. And I think if you're going to be looking at refurbing an existing structure, base you've got to work from is literally the frame, and even that could be difficult. So, generally speaking, the question, wherever the question comes from, yes, it's going to be more expensive. It's going to be even more expensive now because of the sustainability requirements and because of this embodied carbon. We'll go back to this 3-dimensional thing, embodied carbon, and also your EEA, your energy use intensity. To hit those goals with existing buildings is very tough. I know we've got 2, and it's really tough. We're taking stuff that we've learnt from Exeter, and we're putting into Bridgewater, and it's making a difference. There's no doubt about that. I'm happy to talk to people about that as and when, but it's a tough call.
I have one more question at the end from my side.
Okay.
Obviously you managed, obviously you made it, and obviously your numbers fit somehow. What are the hurdles for the others? Why don't they do that?
It's a very good question, actually. I'm not sure. You could throw it back at them, actually, and ask them why they haven't done it as well.
What's your opinion about that?
I think like a lot of these things, Herbert, I think they start off as small companies, small individuals, people who've got ideas, and that's where they start off, and then they start sort of gaining a bit of momentum. They get some funding, they get some sort of ideas thrown in, and then they'll start going through, you go through your entrepreneurial bit, and then you go through your first phase of people getting involved in it. And once you get to your 16% of your first phase, people taking it up, then the hammer drops, and then the big boys will start getting involved. Then you'll start getting your IHGs and your Hiltons and everything. When it becomes a little bit more secure, shall we say. At the moment, we're taking a hell of a risk. We're still taking a risk. right? We can't put hand on heart and say, yeah, we're going to be utilising 295,000 kilowatt hours a year. It's going to be that far off. We'll be very, very close. And we know that because we've done so much work on it, and we've had something like 45 sets of consultants working on us, where normally on a construction you have about 32. So there's been a lot of more input in terms of sustainability. And that's obviously increased cost, but somebody had to do it. So we're all now, as an industry, we have to do something about it. So it is really important.
Tim, thanks a lot.
Others can help. I'm all ears. We're still learning.
We could talk about that longer. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
if I save energy, as he was talking about, huge savings that capitalize up to 3-4 million a year, right? I think it's a really good principle. The guest experience should not suffer. And I actually think we're going to get to the point where, with changing expectations, the guest experience will actually improve. And I think that's where we're going to get to. So I think it's way too simplistic, with respect, to go, if I can't charge more, I'm not doing it. I mean, it's much more complicated than that, much more nuanced than that. And I hope, for those of us who come back year after year and are just listening to each other, that's becoming obvious if it isn't already. Okay, so Brian and Xander up next, please, and Miney and Ava, if you could go for miking up. No, sorry, I'm sorry, I'm Tom and Dave next, I'm sorry. And Brian and Xander go for miking up. Tom, I'm sorry. Sorry, I've all one, sorry. Sorry, Dave. I was reading the wrong line. Okay, and you guys go for miking up. That's brilliant. Do you need this?
Yes, I think I will.
So that one to go forward.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and lovely to be here. I'm Tom Wilson. I am the BREEAM Science Lead, and I'm delighted to introduce Dave Lomax from War Thistleton Architects, talking about one of the projects you've done in the UK and what we can learn from that for the hospitality sector. So, over to you.
Smashing. Shall I stand? Oh, I was rather hopeful of a video at this point. Let's see what happens. No such luck. Okay, please be kind on the numbers questions. I'm very much an architect and not a hotelier, so very happy to talk to you about buildings, not so much about finance. But just to talk a little bit about our practice, I don't think it's too egotistical to say that we are world leaders in what we do. And what we do is we are what we would describe as a purpose-led or an ethos-led practice. Our focus is on reducing the embodied carbon impact of our buildings. What's incredibly important to us is that we start off, going back to these points about guest experience and things like that, with the ambition to create the most high-quality buildings, or at least the highest quality buildings that we need. What we do instead of kind of bells and whistles and having big green walls that go up the side of our buildings and whirligigs on the roof is we look at the fundament of what our buildings are made of. And that has led our practice to focusing on building in mass timber. So you heard a little bit about CLT mentioned in the last talk. We've delivered over 30 mass timber buildings in the UK and all over the world. And we've done it on cost. So we're pretty sure that it is deliverable. Why do we do it? Well, the first thing to say is that the reason that we spend our time coming out to meet people like you, we actually put 25% of our practice dedicated purely to peer-reviewed research to substantiate the way that we deliver these buildings and help others to do the same, is because we have this incredible burden as people who design, finance, deliver, procure buildings. The impact that we can make as corporate entities or as deliverers of these projects is vastly disproportionate to the impact we can make as individuals. I'm not encouraging you not to go vegan, I'm not encouraging you not to cycle to work, but the slide here is a little illustration of what it can mean if you make relatively modest decisions or different approaches in your business life. And the other reason we do it is because what we're aiming to do is take our high embodied carbon materials, yes. We're aiming to replace them with low embodied carbon materials, also yes. That's replacing concrete and steel with timber. But what we're also looking to do is address parts of the sustainability matrix that really are underreported. If you look at what's in the UN climate reports, if you look at how we aim to retain our climate to 1.5, probably gone, or 2 degrees of global warming, there's actually a requirement, a baseline requirement in all of those models to take carbon out of the atmosphere. So the really important thing we can do by building in timber is take all that carbon stored in trees and put it somewhere where it won't go back into the atmosphere for a very, very long time. And that, to us, is why mass timber can save the world. Better talk about the actual project at hand. So that's the little baseline for why we're doing what we're doing. I feel like I've missed a slide there. Oh, there we go, sorry. Well, actually, what we found working with our client, Tom, and the Grimsby Ice Factory Group and Westheath, is a real kind of corollary in what we're thinking about, what our interests are, and what's happening in this little part of the world in northeast Lincolnshire. Grimsby, you may not know, is the largest operation and maintenance port for offshore wind in the world. It has major headquarters of Danish business Ørsted and other businesses engaged in the same thing. So this idea of the site of this kind of technological innovation and this way of thinking about offshore wind really chimes with us and the way that we go about our business. But also, thinking about sustainability in the wider sense, it's also it's actually called Great Grimsby. It is a great place that has had that kind of heart and soul taken away after the Cod Wars, after all those different things. And in the psyche of the people, it is an incredibly important place. The ice factory, the fish docks, the ice factory too being this kind of icon of Victorian innovation. This is where they would make the ice, take the ice across to the fish sheds, pack that ice. But also it's the site of this incredible cultural memory that is lost. So there is currently almost no access to the dockside for the people of Grimsby. Everybody you meet has a story about an uncle or a granddad or somebody who worked in the ice factory. So the opportunity is to build sustainability into the urban scale by reinvigorating that site, by bringing people back to the docks, by giving Grimsby its soul again, but by founding it on this kind of pillar of new sustainable innovation and technology. So bringing that white heater technology back to the docks. The broader plan here is about workspace. This is a workspace-led scheme, so all those sheds you can see in the foreground of the image, they are there available for the offshore industry to come and inhabit. We're re-inhabiting the ice factory with a new event centre, so a bit of a hospitality angle there, but also, of course, being a very internationally focused business and internationally focused town, the hotel is what anchors this right at its heart. I think it's really important to say as well, the expectation here is that those innovations in sustainable energy will become a fundamental part of the programme. So what we intend to do is install a temporary landside solar array in place of all the buildings you see here. That will step by step be lifted onto the roofs of the buildings and reinstalled, and a permanent offshore, if you like, floating in the dock solar array, which aims to deliver not necessarily free energy in perpetuity, but energy fixed prices for over 25 years. So we're going to bring the technology that we've learned, not just from low carbon building, but from systemized building, from adaptable building, from projects we've done already in the industrial space to build the workspaces. In that systemized approach, we can build it as the investment comes forward and becomes secure. We can adapt it. Here in this image, you can see a couple of extra beams in the foreground. The owner of this factory is able to adapt their space live as they go by lifting those beams, slotting them into place the same way as the ones you can see forming the first floor here into that high bay storage. So we know all these principles that can deliver a sustainable place. I guess the question is, what does that look like when we apply it to the hotel? So you can see it's a relatively modestly scaled hospitality offer. We think it's a very important one. We think being kind to a town that I've grown to love over the last 5 to 7 years, we think we'll be raising the bar, even with a relatively modest hotel, with the offer that we'll provide. But here you can see, in and of itself, it washes its face from a sustainability point of view and will be a net zero hotel. We have piles that deliver ground source heat. We have the district energy network that will be plugged into, will be served by air source heat pumps and roof-mounted PVs. The technology we'll use here, through our experience of building in timber, will be a hybrid of steel and wood. The building you see on the left is a commercial building, so slightly different, but that was actually delivered to Cathay at £175 a square foot. So these are not impossible projects to bring forward in economical ways, but the only way you can do that is to design buildings to be made from timber. It is not enough to simply design a concrete building, colour the cross-section in yellow at stage 3 and say, aha, I have a net zero project. We have to design buildings that are predicated on the efficiency and the use of this material. So as you can see, we make no great claims. This is not a groundbreaking offer in terms of the hospitality, but what it is rigorous, simple, and designed to be built in the material we have at hand. And those decisions go through 2 other decisions. We don't want to bring an alien architecture to the docks. We want to re-enhance the sense of place. The materials are industrial, they're robust. They speak of the history of the docks. But little simple decisions like avoiding really high embodied carbon materials like aluminium and choosing lower embodied carbon materials like steel can make a really significant difference. Now, my hope is that most of the buildings we build in the next 5 years will be the buildings we have for the next 50 or 100. So I'm not super interested in recycling aluminium, but I am very interested in durable, long life, low embodied carbon materials that make a difference today. And of course, what we have to do is, at the end of the day, we're delivering a hospitality offer, we're delivering a place and a re-inhabiting of a community. So there are some really simple decisions that we can make to reinforce that social aspect, the S of the ESG. Here you can see a courtyard that the new hotel will create, very simple L-shaped courtyard. This will be phase 2, the ice factory being phase 1. So really little moves to try and ameliorate what that wind effect is coming off the North Sea onto the docks, providing a sheltered courtyard, giving places for that community feeling to start to accrete in the new spaces we make. That forms a courtyard to the new offices in the north building of the ice factory. And of course, we have an amazing opportunity in terms of the F&B offer here. What we have is in Grimsby still the UK's main centre for food distribution, and a great opportunity to anchor what we deliver in its place. So it should be fresh fish, it should be food that comes into Grimsby. It should even be packed in ice next door, maybe in the last remaining demonstration bay of the historic ice factory. So that's a little bit about what we've been up to. I forgot to start my timer. Maybe that was 3 minutes, maybe it was 8. I don't know, but
it was perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So while people have the opportunity to send the questions through on Mentimeter, I've got one that I want to start off with. So as you described, this is a mixed-use development. What would the key lessons from your approach using mass timber and the systematized approach be for the hospitality sector? What lessons can they draw?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say is maybe my answer will come from our approach to architecture more generally as much as our approach to this building. But I think what we like to describe our architecture as is an architecture of sufficiency. So the whole aim has always been that, you know, when we started looking at sustainability in architecture, started thinking about how we would do it, we were a little bit perturbed by the fact that all sustainable buildings had to look sustainable. And actually, you know, what we try to deliver are normal, everyday buildings, because ultimately that one demonstrator project is not going to be the one that acts at the sort of scale that we need to act at. So for us, it's about the same principles we would apply in any material and in any process. What is an efficient building? It doesn't have to be a worse building. You don't have to walk around with holes in your jumper to prove how sustainable you are. You just have to buy one good jumper instead of 15 from Shine that you'll throw in the bin every 6 months. And I think as architects and perhaps even as developers, we've come to a kind of collective understanding that we can just throw another log on the fire, right? So say we're doing a housing project and we want a penthouse. Well, let's step that structure in and let's have a little bit more structure in the way. Well, actually, no, if we can accept that minor constraint of maybe we should acknowledge that gravity runs in a straight line and maybe the columns should be under the columns, and we can do these in a simple way. Firstly, those deliver the outcomes that we want, but also it really does open up that opportunity for cost-effective use of lower carbon materials. Yeah.
Fantastic. So focusing on that, as the questions come through, you talked about this as a net zero carbon hotel. What has been the main way that you've achieved those net zero carbon outcomes?
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, obviously the embodied carbon is a significant component of that. Lots of them are simply from the book of good decisions. You know, we have the opportunity to install air source heat pumps, therefore we should do that. But I think also what's important about this scheme, and an opportunity that not everybody has, is the opportunity to take a district-wide approach to that. You know, what I always think is that a bespoke understanding of what you're trying to achieve is the most important one. So going in with a fixed idea of how net zero will be achieved maybe isn't the right way. You know, how many of us have installed special rooms in our buildings for future connections to district heat networks that we suspect heavily will never come to pass? Well, that's using carbon in a beneficial way. So here, of course, we are lucky to have this opportunity to be able to intervene at a much bigger district scale, but therefore it's even more important that we take it.
Fantastic. It's really interesting because you mentioned that, and we had that in the talk before as well, about how that particular hotel was going to interact with the business park next door. And I think that's certainly the way that things are moving. So just to pick up, you did mention this about the using timber and the longevity compared to more traditional approaches. What have you found with that?
Well, I'm going to give you my kind of slightly comedic, I'm still on a stage answer. But the first answer is to say, if you want to pop down to Liberties down in the West End and have a look at a timber building that's been there for several hundred years, what you might not know is actually all the timber for Liberties was reclaimed from an Elizabethan warship. So you can fire cannonballs at it, you can take it out of the water, you can put it in the middle of Covent Garden, and it can last for another few hundred years. Now, look, that one's been covered in tar and paint and all sorts of things. The modern mass timber materials that we use today are made in factories, they're warranted, they're tested, much different to the way that we maybe built before. But most importantly, they're indoors, you know, and ultimately, 99% of the time, these should be buildings that last for multiples of hundreds of years, not multiples of tens of years. What I will say is it's incredibly important in our design process that our buildings are wholly demountable, not because we want to see them taken down and put up again later, but because if we do lose an element, we want to be able to replace that element. It's for the kind of classic scholars amongst you, that's Xerxes' ship, but for the less educated, perhaps, maybe that's Trigger's broom. But the idea that that building can perpetuate and remain the same building even if components do have to be replaced. And that also requires careful design. So we heard, and it's quite right to say that acoustics is a big challenge for timber buildings, but the default response is to pour loads of sand and cement screed on the floor. Well, look, firstly, you're not going to see your leak for quite a long time. Secondly, you're going to have to smash your floor to bits to fix your leak. So a lot of our research work goes into how do we design these buildings for longevity, for circularity, and all those other good things.
Yeah, fantastic. And then we've got another question coming back to, again, the previous talk about some of the building regulations. So they seem to be in conflict sometimes with the green aspirations. So we talked about the acoustics and mass timber. How do you see that going, and where do you see the Building Safety Act helping to improve that?
I mean, one of the big opportunities for us in the Building Safety Act, particularly for higher risk buildings, which currently hotels are not, but we expect that they will be in very short order, is that, you know, it becomes more incumbent on design teams to actually design their buildings before they start building them. You know, if you ordered your new Audi and somebody turned up and said, not quite sure how big the engine is, and I'm going to build it on your drive in the rain, you'd not be too impressed. And yet we still take that attitude to designing buildings. So the idea that the gateway process promotes early design is very helpful in promoting off-site manufacture, because you design your building before you procure it. You can circumvent some of the challenges that we face with that. But I think it is fair to say that some of the policy aspirations are in tension with what is changing in building regulations in the UK. We were the world leaders in mass timber technology. We are now perhaps falling behind. But our business has published two critical pieces of research in this space. Firstly, the new model building, which is housing-led, which demonstrates that within current building regulations, we can deliver at least up to 18-metre residential buildings. But importantly, that comes with an offer in principle for insurance. It comes with a letter of comfort from the NHBC, and it comes with a cost plan and all those other good things. But that is predicated on standard details and systemizing the way we go about this. So actually, the gateway process and BSR can help with that. And just to keep you informed, we also have a corollary of that for the commercial sector, which is Commercial Timber Guidebook, which codifies with a suite of 12 different fire engineers, which was fun. But also funded by the likes of Related Argent, Hines, Grosvenor, all British Land, all the people you'd expect. And that codifies mass timber and hybrid construction for commercial buildings up to 30 metres, so 10-storey buildings. So, you know, we are producing this work to substantiate the ability to deliver. And my suspicion is that actually, you know, what I hear from underwriters, not necessarily the people I thought I'd be spending all my time with when I was scribbling away at university, but what they tell me is a lot of the time they're sitting there and seeing the skill and expertise applied to these buildings and sort of going, well, when did I last go on one of my concrete building sites and see if the rebar was covered by 50 mil like they said it was. So I actually think other sectors are going to find themselves in a situation where pre-design is novel and scary, and, you know, working to standard details is unfamiliar. So I do think timber can have a bright new age in that. And
do you see any increases in the construction timeline, or is it actually faster to do it that way?
I mean, ultimately, one of the biggest levers for us to talk to our clients about cost-neutral timber buildings is in the timelines. So the fact that it's erected substantially quicker. We did a study for the American and Canadian agriculture departments, which they wanted to get data to change building codes over there. We studied 100 buildings in the UK, and we found that erection could be up to 25% quicker across those buildings. Now, at the end of the day, if you don't design it for timber and you don't buy it properly, you will lose time because you are prefabricating. But if you design in that process, absolutely it can be quicker. And of course, no borrowing costs contribute to the guest experience. You know, so if we can reduce that, we can deliver better value, even if the cost is broadly the same.
Fantastic. And then going on to one of a follow-on from the previous question about ESG reporting. So you mentioned a bit about the S in ESG, but do you see your approach as helping to facilitate the reporting on all of that for other frameworks that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, what we hear in terms of nervousness about big companies with extensive portfolios is that they're looking at this fear of stranded assets. We don't really know exactly how we will be judged on ESG as time evolves and as the way we measure it evolves. And there is this fear of where is the weight on the seesaw? Have I bought an asset or have I invested in something that is going to weigh on the correct side? And what we've heard anecdotally is, big businesses purchasing green energy suppliers who turn out not to be that green.
Yes.
Right. And so there's risk and there's worry. And, I use this example only because it was mentioned, not to kind of critique anything in the previous one. But one of the conversations we have a lot is about things like high GGBS content buildings. There's so much demand for that that there's not a lot of it on the market. So it's starting to get very expensive. And what we're finding is a lot of people are writing very compelling life cycle carbon assessments in design and finding a substantial plank of that is no longer deliverable when they come to procure the building. Yeah. So part of the story that we tell around timber is that opportunity to have something where we can take you up into the forest. You can see the tree, right? And you can follow its path right the way to your building. So we have an auditable, demonstrable, and therefore accreditable and saleable asset in terms of those ESG balances. Yeah,
fantastic. That actually, to some extent, addresses the question that we've got at the moment about the perception of the debt financing industry doesn't have the appetite for timber frame buildings. So you've touched on that, but any other things to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an absolutely fair question. And I think the problem we find with trying to deliver timber buildings over many, many years is that there are such a lot of perception barriers. None of them are that big, but when you get to number 10, there's a kind of, I'm not doing it. And I do think that debt financing question is part of that. What we do in our business is we try and get out of our ivory tower and go and meet people and talk to people. Yeah. I mean, there's a fantastic, it's not quite the same, but in the insurance world, there's a fantastic document we contributed to by the Association of Sustainable Building Products, which is the Mass Timber Insurance Guidebook. And all it is really is somebody's gone out and talked to some insurers, asked them what it is they need to get comfortable and codified it and told us how to do it. Yeah. And, you've heard, I think, a little bit this morning about green finance and opportunities around that. There are definitely lenders out there who see this as a positive and see this as that kind of auditable, demonstrable, green finance-backed situation. But I acknowledge, there are barriers. And if we want to do better, sometimes we have to work a bit harder. And, we're happy to do that with you if it's something that you find exciting.
Do you see that attitude changes as you go around the world? So with BREEAM, we've got much more interest in kind of mass timber in our Norwegian market, in North America as well. I know you're doing obviously great work in the UK, but do you find that changes?
Yeah, well, I mean, the eagle-eyed amongst you will have spotted that I'm not Andrew Waugh, as previously identified. And the reason I'm not Andrew Waugh is because actually a large proportion of our work is overseas now. I think there is an incredible appetite for the UK, but that sort of 10 barriers has been added to, perception-wise at least, in terms of building regulations. But, because of the expertise we've garnered over the last 20 years, the phone rings. It seems to be a different country every year. Currently seems to be Portugal and Ireland have awoken to the opportunities of mass timber. But, Andrew at the moment is coming back from the US. We have projects on each coast and one in the middle, not helping our carbon footprint. It's not particularly well planned, and we have projects in Portugal, Italy, Denmark. So I think, look, everywhere in the world faces those same barriers, right? And I think the word buried in the last question is timber frame. There's still a perception that it's these little ladder frames with holes in that propagate fire. But I do think for us at the moment, we are seeing a more robust move to that kind of way of thinking.
And what were some of the specific challenges you found overcoming kind of planning requirements or planning restrictions on this project?
I mean, honestly, I've never had such a positive relationship with the local authority as we have with North East Lincolnshire. I mean, ultimately, they recognise that what they have has the potential to be an incredible asset. It was sort of within the purview of Associated British Ports. So, Tom, our client's first and most impressive achievement was to wrest this fantastic building from the clutches of ABP and save it. But, I think, look, at the end of the day, if there's anything I learned throughout my career, through being a student, through all those things, it's all about talking.
Yeah.
And if you go and talk to people, you can do well. I mean, this is the only the Ice Factory is the only UK industrial building on Europa Nostra's at-risk industrial heritage register. So it's a valuable building. We spoke to the Victorian Society, we spoke to Heritage England, we spoke to Europa Nostra. We actually got letters of support from Europa Nostra and Heritage England. Right, so look, the timber's part of it. You know, we're telling a good, responsible, meaningful story that isn't just I'll stick a thing on the roof and maybe I won't do it later. But actually, at the end of the day, it's about building relationships, it's about talking, and it's about delivering the things that you talk about.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, that was very interesting. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you all for all of your questions.
Thank you both very
Are
much.
we directly or?
Just thank you both very much. That was terrific, Dave.
Come
Thank
later?
you. Just to reiterate what Dave was saying about this idea that timber used in buildings has a really big advantage longer term of actually maintaining the storage of the greenhouse gases that are sequestered within the timber. Okay, and that's really important because if we leave them as trees and they burn down, all of the greenhouse gases that have been stored in that tree, all of them, are re-released back into the atmosphere. Okay? That's quite shocking. So in the previous wildfires in California up to 2017, if you remember around then, all of the GHG that had been stored in those trees that burnt was re-released, and it pretty much removed all the gains that had been made between 2000 and 2017. Okay? It just reset the clock, essentially. So this idea of keeping the carbon sequestered essentially forever, like liberty, is a brilliant idea. It's an additional benefit, which I think is really interesting. Picking up again on Tim's idea of repeatability and this idea of modular design, I think is obviously terrific. God, I've got instructions here all over the place. Whilst I'm reading my instructions, why don't we get Brian, Xander, Maini, and Eva to come up, please, for the last of these. Dragon's Den, if you can, if you're all happy. I don't know who, there's a slide, whoever's doing the slides, there it is. Thank you. Okay, I'll do all that. Okay. Just before I forget, Corey, are you here? Coming a little later, so I'll talk to him later. Okay. I can't read the rest of this, I'll do it later. Okay, thank you guys.
Hello everyone. Is this thing on? Very good.
Yeah.
So here we are at our final Dragon's Den session, and I just want to say how wonderful it's been to listen to all the previous sessions and the pitches. Amazing ideas, visionary approaches, all very exciting. I'm Brian Okniansky. I'm an architect and the head of sustainability at Studio Morin. We are strategic partners of the EEA for sustainable architecture and interior design. And we are the proud architects of the Westin Hotel, and we hope you're having a fabulous time here. I personally am on the technical committee for the EEA, and I also chair the circularity work stream. And so I'm really excited to be the facilitator for this session, which is about circularity innovation. And you will have heard earlier today about kind of bringing farming into the urban environment, greenifying buildings. About 14 years ago, you might say that a prototype or a test case emerged in Amsterdam for just this type of development. It was visionary. It was attempting to close the resource loops that go into hotels and right back out typically, but to keep them circular. And that visionary and disruptor, who many of you know, is Xander Bueno de Mesquita, sitting at the end of the stage there. And Xander, pardon me, is an amazing storyteller. And stories have characters, don't they? And in order to develop these types of developments, you need a crack team. You need people who know about the actual technical aspects of delivering these kind of circular, closed-loop hotel systems that are self-sufficient. And of course, we have Maini Prinz from Priva Group, who was instrumental in the smart climate and food systems as part of that development. And we have Eva Gladek, the CEO and founder of Metabolic, who was involved as the circular economy and systems innovation expert for that development. Now, you can imagine when that development was coming to, that a lot of lessons were learned. And what this session is about, which I'll get you to now, is about the next steps in scaling it up. So without further ado, here is Xander to introduce Ipona to you.
Thank you for the great introduction. How did we get here? After 14 years ago, we developed like the circular hotel with the greenhouse on top of it. And I wondered, is that enough? Are sustainable buildings enough? So how did we get in Portugal, where our location is landed, with Epona? 6 years ago, I was invited by some mayors in the north of Portugal to talk about the challenge of rural areas and people were leaving. And I was there with 6 people, and traditionally wise, we had some dinner, and they said, you're Bueno de Mesquita, you're Portuguese. I said, no, you kicked me out in 1600, I came back to take it all back. So what I want to say, if you are going a process like this, for me, as a storytelling, people have to understand your jokes. And it's not just the jokes, like the history of Portugal and Amsterdam and my family, it goes way back. So from that platform, I got to know all the top ministries and specifically secretaries of state and the very strong platform of nature protection. And 2 years ago, I moved to the location, our beloved location, which is in Teju. And you see some images over here. And I've been living there for the last 2 years to really start understanding the place and the people and their needs. And both entities became ambassadors for me, so that really helped. So Now we dive into what is the, this is not the right slide. This is the better slide. Where is it located? So to give you an instigation, if you don't know Portugal very well, so on the left-hand side is Portugal. Obviously the red dot is where we are currently trying to land, or are we landing? And if you look at it, it's like in the middle, it's about 2 hours up to Lisbon and down for Faro, 1.5 hours. The crucial thing of this little map is the green arcade. It's all nature. So it's very, very underdeveloped in big resorts and stuff, encounter like the whole Algarve. So that's an added value for us and a challenge for the standard developers of real estate or hospitality. So this is actually the actual location, and it's 705 hectares. And if you follow the blue line, if you follow the yellow line, that's the 700 hectares, and it's originally mono-agriculture. Being depleted because lack of water and the soil. So about 10 years ago they decided, so there's not really a business case in it here, let's try to do a golf resort. It's a very standard golf resort, and you look at it, it's like at the right-hand side, it's a standard large golf resort, so about 400 best 5-star hotel, 1,200 beds, a 5-star village, 18 halls. They got a permit from the Camera, the municipal, but then the nature platform said, no way. So it's still hovering around there, and we said, we can change it with different business models, and not only the real estate, and they add value to each other. So here you have a little overview. At the left-hand side, it's a beautiful old village where originally all the Portuguese people come on holidays. You see the ocean, the river, there is a oyster farm. Everything is there, and at the other side is going to be the location. So coming in, reviving the economies and getting people back, we took the same map and said, are there different kinds of added values who add to each other? The very first thing, specifically in Portugal, and not only in Portugal, is water. If you don't have water, there's no economy. That's number one, specifically in Portugal, and as you all know, there were a lot of wildfires. So we said we take the same volume and we recreate it in a village. And that's partly a village where people live and strive in new economies, and partly travelers and expats who want to get their children to school coming from Singapore or whatever. So we try to divide it in 4 different business models who add value to each other business model. So what I already told you guys is, if you want to do anything, even if you want to develop a standard golf resort, you need water. So once you get water in this depleted land, the value goes up only by providing water and plants, and then you get the whole. Then the second model is obviously the old original economic model. It's agriculture, but not mono agriculture, which depleted the land, but the new type of agriculture. And Meine and Eva will for sure go into that and where the business cases are. And I don't want to skip the fun part. The other fun part is fiber, like cork, hemp, for building materials. Obviously, the community is a key driver in it, and I hear that the new buzzword in hospitality is community-led hospitality, which I really, really like, but without a community, there is no community-led hospitality. So it's crucial to get the local people back, avoiding the brain drain of the young kids, getting the farmers to new economies, which adds to the value at the end of the day. Why we are here is what is the real estate, and all these different business pillars, models, they enhance each other, and we'd love to dive into it with my great partners. To do this, and that was my lesson from my previous project, I love hospitality because it's about people and communities and connection. And if you think about that and say, okay, we have to do sustainability as well, I'll be the last person to say I'm going to be the expert. So in my previous project, I said we need somebody who knows everything about food and everything about, I don't even know what the definition is, but let's call it sustainability. So here we are in 2.0 with our team, and the top team is like the 3 founding mothers. And on the right-hand side, it's the people who really helped us in doing soft due diligence on the land and on the real estate. And not equally important guy is this guy Laszlo Pushko, and he is helping us in wellness in hospitality. And now I divided it in the left-hand side, the global leaders in solutions on architecture, design, craftsmanship, etc., etc. But more importantly, I took 6 years to find the ambassadors in the local families, the local communities, universities, secretaries of state, who all have the same demand to do it, but nobody did it yet. My last shout is, come to our breakout. It's straight after this session, and let's start the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Xander. So yes, you heard that right. There will be a breakout session during the lunch hour, but it will be at the restaurant at the bridge at the same time that the lunch break is taking place. So let's just dive right in. So there's existing plans for this part of the world. Someone's already trying to develop it. They reached hardships. Something didn't quite go through. So there are clearly risks in here. So could you just talk to the de-risking process for this site?
I guess you're asking Eva and introducing Eva.
Well, you mentioned that the community or the people are very important to this. The nature is a very critical dimension to this, and the food aspect is, right? So let's dive in with the nature component to this development to de-risk it.
Okay. So I'm going to speak from a kind of holistic perspective. So obviously prime development territory, beautiful landscapes, coastal Portugal, and very difficult to actually get permission, social permission and real permission to develop there. And the approach that we have, this multi-layered approach, it restores the nature, it actually creates community. It actually takes all of those things that made it impossible for this golf resort to get off the ground and creates the social permit to do that. So that is effectively one of the main things with the business case, is that it actually makes this type of development possible. Something I also wanted to say is that in the context of really these great projects that have been shared this morning, a lot of it is around single buildings. It's how do you make this particular building sustainable? But actually, when you look at the bigger picture carbon situation, we're running out of our carbon budget for residential in Europe across most countries next year. And we have to be looking at how we reorganize where people are living and in what densities. And by looking at this entire community design, we're talking about taking underutilized spaces, actually multi-solving for other problems, like the loss of knowledge in agriculture and the fact that actually we'll be facing food security crises in the future if we don't manage to do this. So these multi-layered business models give us the license to operate in these types of places, allow us to be invited by these communities, and also create multiple value streams that really enhance the business model.
Right.
And that brings us on to food, doesn't it, Manny?
Yeah. And in food, of course, there's quite some risks. I think if I would ask you, if I would tell you I'm a farmer, how would you look at me? I think you will feel sorry. Is it? Yeah, because that is, of course, the way we look at this world. Huh? It is mostly something that's subsidized, but the most and biggest risk, it's disappearing. So despite of the risks that we are facing due to climate change and our food production, I like to say without energy, we will have no more food in the coming decades. So that's one. And the second one is, what about the next generation farmers? So if climate change is not a problem, then we will have no next generation farmers anyway. So the nicest and the most perfect opportunities that are there is kind of to re-look and redesign the way we are looking to these holistic systems, to bring back all those points. And every country deserves its own economy. And most of the economies in most countries are starting with agriculture. That is a fact. So when you bring that back and combine it with different business models, it's not about putting somewhere a greenhouse or tabletop farms or open field farming. Personally, I don't care. It's not the point. It's about entrepreneurs. And it's his business model. So if he has a good marketplace and he knows his energy prices and he knows that he can share water resources and he knows that he can share the infrastructure underneath it that makes his business feasible, then you get a point. And then the next generation farmers will be very, very much interested to go and be part of these growing communities like Epona, because it's a mixture of different business models. And I certainly can also be part of the energy supply. And as a farmer, I'm also the one who has all the waste materials becoming beautiful building materials. And as a farmer, I'm part of the clean water and I can reuse the wastewater from the hotel. And as a farmer, you can follow me, huh? That is the way we need to go, and we need to see that happening. And I believe in this way also in Epona.
Sounds great. And in regards to the challenges with the regulation to even build on a site like this, Xander, you mentioned that you've embedded yourself in the culture, haven't you? Can you talk to how you de-risked?
Yeah. Is it working? Yeah, I heard comments earlier about it. It's about connecting, and specifically, and not only in Portugal, but I realize it's very much in the cascas, as they call it, like the bars, and it's very informal. So you have to be committed. Either find somebody local, or be committed to really dive deep in places, the culture, and the people, and then all of a sudden you get ambassadors instead of anti-things. And there are facts and figures about that, that if you take this pre-time, and that will relate to everybody, if you have a large development project, the worst thing you can happen is halfway development, somebody says there's a wild bird, or, well, you have to stop the process. There is facts and figures, and I want to stay away as much as possible against facts and figures. It shortens your average development time in 18 months. But then you have to have all the ambassadors in. The sustainable, the nature people, the Secretary of State of Tourism, and if you look at currently, specifically the last six years, where it's the strategy of tourism, strategy of biodiversity agriculture, I guess our team is ticking all the boxes and make it easier and de-risk the whole process development of itself. Related to this golf resort permit, which has been there for 15 years or 10 years, and people basically gave up because they didn't take the effort to say, we're going to do good stuff and we need you empowered in it.
And that is actually a good segue to this question that we have on Mentimeter, which speaks to one of the biggest risks. If there's no water, there's no development. Mm-hmm. So I think, Eva, how will you manage the water scarcity risk on the site?
So, is this on? Okay. The site itself used to be used for agriculture and monoculture crops and has been depleted in various ways. And in lots of ways, actually, the approach to managing the water scarcity risk is not rocket science. Right now, with this depleted soil, if you have a strong rainfall, it all washes off and takes the topsoil with it. If you actually start to intentionally design keyline agriculture with deep root systems, you start bringing that water in, you can actually start to intentionally repair the water table. There's also enough water falling that if you capture it and put it into gray water systems, put it into these closed agriculture systems that we're also envisioning as part of the entire project, you actually start to create these really smart water pathways that also become a replicable blueprint for other parts, other developments in water scarce areas where traveling and tourism are part of the economy as well.
Oh, the next question's interesting. Let's keep that on for a second, but just to segue on that last point, I just wanted to talk about the repeatability of what the Epona strategy is. Is this something that will just work here at Epona with the team that you've put together and the strategy that you have, or is this repeatable?
I would like to answer the Mentimeter, and I think Eva would be great to answer your question.
Should I answer yours first?
Go on then.
I'll just say
it's a democracy.
Okay, I'll say it quickly. And of course, we'd love to speak with all of you more extensively at lunch if you want to join us. But we really envision this as a new model. So really looking at how you actually take this whole systems design, community design approach and turn it into something that can reinvigorate hospitality for the coming centuries, well, at least decades, let's say. So this kind of layered set of value streams. It's almost like if you take the Zoko model, which I love, and really look at it at a community level to really see how you can get all the different types of value. And then really, once we get this working here in this pilot case, we can see how to extend that to other geographies in this kind of hot, dry tourism belt.
Yeah. And that's the technical part?
Into the mic, please,
That's
Anna.
the technical part. And I think one of the first, or coming from my vision, the first one is you can have all those technical closed loops and you begin with places and people. Because if you don't understand them, you'll never be able to understand the sense of places, the early economy and the well-being and the beautiful word of Portugal. And for me, that's the translation of regeneration, saudade, belonging to something never existed, actually. So you want me to answer this one as well?
Where and how will you find the right quality staff to run this operation?
So everybody...
Saved by the bell.
Everybody in the audience is aware, and also the agriculture. One of the biggest problems is staff. So how do you solve that? And in business case of a hotel, there's limited space to give more money or whatever. So there are two things crucial. Since we have this village, we make it easier to live there, so lower the prices. So you've got more salary left to spend. And even more importantly, you belong to a community. You want to be a part of it. So there are two sides. And I don't want to get into the holistic thing, but it's basically the period of Maslow and getting steps and steps. And everybody in my whole team, or everybody in... So okay, how do we contribute to feel togetherness again? And it's very holistic, but I would love to have a question about wellness as well.
Well, while we're on the subject of wellness, Sander, what is the link between a wellness model for the development?
Good question, thank you.
Oh.
I have a pretty good idea for it, and I am convinced it's crucial for the whole process. But the person who is better able to answer it happens to be in the audience, and it's Laszlo. So I would love to give him 2 minutes to answer this question. And I'll take the mic then.
Welcome, Laszlo.
Thank you for the unexpected invite. The story is that we understand that providing a well-being, improving experience doesn't need to be locked into 4 walls. So it's not in a space, but often you have that this is the hotel, this is the resort, and there's some things on the side which you call spa or amenity. So every single department and every single service would contribute to the guest as well as the staff's well-being, as a software as well as hardware. So it's not an add-on, it's integrated. So it's not, we don't keep it separately as a department, but we keep it as an integral part of the design as well as the delivery. And often it's not, to your face that now you have a wellness experience, but I know exactly how it is going to work and which other domain of your well-being will be improved but not sold to you per se, as now you have a half an hour wellness experience because just leave it for somewhere else. So this is kind of foresightedness and understanding of how it works that makes it all the different.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Laszlo. Now, I think the question you all must be thinking right now is, well, what's the next steps and what's needed to move this forward? And time, unfortunately, is up for this session. However, we are ready now we invite you to join us for this breakout session to continue talking about this particular opportunity, Epona, at the restaurant in front of reception, one floor up. And I believe we have lunch catered for those who attend there, so you don't have to queue up here. So thank you all very much, and we will see you in a few minutes to carry this on. Thank you very much.
A nice cliffhanger. Oops.
Mic drop.
Where was that from? Oh, it was there on the table.
Okay, just before we go, sorry, just a couple of things just before you go, please. That's not the only roundtable lunch going on. There are three others. So you're invited to all of them. They're all happening upstairs, I believe. For those of us who are having lunch here or wherever we are having lunch, please be back at 2 o'clock sharp. We'll start again then. Just quickly on that last point, I think the big takeout for me is this idea of human-centered design about systems and do it all up front. Pre-design being a fancy word for that. But this idea of human-centered design. There's a brilliant book, if you don't know, and Xander, you remind me of this. It's a book called The Man Who Planted Trees by Jean Genot. Has anyone heard, know that? Xander is very like the character in that book. Anyway, so I'll see you at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much.